Today we're going to upgrade the heat exchanger on my car. So it's a very important part, but just upgrading the heat exchanger is not necessarily always enough. So what we're going to do is we're also going to upgrade the pump. We're still running the 0.75 lines. It's running a stock Bosch 03 Cobra intercooler pump, and this is a fluenoid single pass heat exchanger that was picked based on the size that I had available. And obviously you can see on these 96 Cobras that they have a very small air opening. So what we want to do is try to maximize that. And so what I'm going to do is replace the entire bumper with a MAF bumper support, tubular bumper support. And they also offer the ability to run a GT500 heat exchanger, which gives us a lot more air area. And it'll help with the 13 to 14 GT500 pump that I also picked up to flow more flow to maximize the 0.75 lines before going to 1-inch line. This is a street car, so it's going to be completely closed, only with a reservoir, no ice tank. So the focus is maximizing the flow and the surface area for the heat exchanger. All right, let's get started. for watching the video. So I want to go over some of the data that we were able to capture within the dyno and test driving it back and forth to work. I always throw the data up a few times after I do each mod, and that way I can kind of actually see what improvements made or if it didn't make any improvements. That's super important when you're developing a Coyote swap car, to really test and tune every little aspect of the modifications you're making, because you could be actually hurting the car by putting something on like an open air filter or not shielding the air intake, stuff like that on your NA builds. And then with the supercharger setup, once you increase boost, it's going to increase heat. So you have to do things to help that process and keeping the IETs down. This was one of the situations with this car, and it started up when I first put the supercharger on. It was a 89 millimeter pull in the stock throttle body, so it was only about 7 psi. So that little heat exchanger was fine. It was a little single pass that I got on a Black Friday day that I was able to fit with the limited amount of room that I had in that front bumper. So once I went to the 82 millimeter pulley, or the 3.25, 9 to 10 psi, and the twin 65 throttle body, it increased boost, and the IETs were starting to become an issue at the track. So I would see anywhere north of 130 to 140 in the 8th mile, and then on the 4th gear pull, shifting into 4th and going into the quarter mile, I was seeing IETs of 150. So unfortunately at 150, you have most tuners are going to put in 1 to 2 degree of timing reduction. So once it hits a certain threshold in IETs that it's seeing, it's going to start reducing engine ignition timing to save the motor, right? The hotter you are, the less efficient the motor is going to be, and it's going to be more prone to detonation, right? The early detonation of the combustion center, because it's so hot. So it's basically pre-igniting before the spark plug has a chance to ignite the fuel mixture. So that's no bueno. That's what's going to ruin your motor. It's going to melt pistons. So keeping with the supercharger, turbos and pro chargers and centrifugals, they're all, you know, very IET dependent. But with PD blowers, with especially ones that use a liquid or air to water system, which all of them do, but my point is it's IETs are even more of an issue with these. They're running an air to water intercooler, so you really have to focus on keeping those downs and paying attention to that every time you increase boost. And the more boost you go, the more that you'll figure out the efficiency range of the actual blower. So typically on the 2.3s, I think 14, 15 psi is where you kind of start seeing the threshold of the intercooler brick or whatever you have under the blower is not typically being able to keep up with that. And you got different ways you can try fixing that. You can do ice, bigger lines, bigger pump, bigger heat exchanger. I chose to do a bigger heat exchanger and pump just based on my budget. So I spent keep in mind that when you buy used parts, you may get something bad, but most of the time I've had good luck with them. So the GT500 heat exchanger I bought used for $200. That's to my doorstep. And then I bought the MAF Racing, which I'll include the link below. You guys need to check them out. They make really, really nice tubular bumper supports, parachute mounts. They make a bunch of other stuff like install tools. Really great company and really easy to deal with. So they made tubular bumper supports for my vehicle, but the cool thing about it is they weld on GT500 tabs so you can run a GT500 style heat exchanger. It made it really easy and really, really high quality stuff, and I was able to get it for $170 shipped, unprepped, so that means I'd have to paint it, but I'm completely okay with saving a couple, 30, 40 bucks on a finished product if all I need to do is put rust prevention on it with a couple coats of paint. So that was perfectly installed, no trimming. I had to do anything on the bumper support. I did have to do some slight trimming on the heat exchanger to kind of trim off some of the factory tabs to make it fit better on my car. So $200 for the heat exchanger, $170 for the MAF racing support, so I'm up to $370. the pump. So the pump, like I said, sometimes you run into issues, either it gets damaged in shipping or the part's bad when you buy it used. So the first pump I ordered was $80. I found it used on one of the websites, on one of the Facebook groups, and it came in the plastic coolant nipple on the top was cracked. I contacted the guy, and he was like, no, it was good to go when I sent it to you, I promise. And we determined that it was shipping, but unfortunately he did not put insurance on it. So that's another thing when you guys are dealing with used parts. It's always good to pay a few bucks to get at least 50, 60 bucks of insurance on something so you can recover it after you find something broken. So we worked out a deal to where I keep the pump, and he just refunded me about 20 bucks. It's good because that top plastic part can be swapped out with the current pump that I bought. I found another pump for 120 bucks. That is the one that's in the car that's working 100% good. So I can always take that one that cracked, take the plastic peak off, and swap the good parts into the one if it ever fails. So essentially we'll just add 200 bucks to the total of the whole project. So 200 bucks plus 370, you're looking at 570. So 570 total to upgrade the system. That is way cheaper than buying a brand new heat exchanger. I know sometimes people are just like, I want the best of the best of the best, and that's fine. But you got to realize there's going to be some type of cost and cost versus benefit. So I wasn't willing to go bigger lines yet because I've spent so much money trying to get the 0.75s routed, and I've already purchased all the coolant hoses and the fittings and all that. So I decided to try to maximize the 0.75 or 3/4 lines before I decide to take everything apart again and do 1 inch and a bigger pump, and weld 1 inch lines onto the factory heat exchanger. One other thing that I'll talk about a little bit later in another video is I did end up coming across a $100 ice tank that may or may not fit. We're going to see if we can get it to fit into the car. It's just a front mount, tiny one that has a little drain that you can drain it out at the track and fit probably about a half bag of ice in it. So it's just another little thing that was cheap. 0.75 lines, once again, trying to maximize the thing. Additionally, there is also tools that you can put in line to actually see the flow. So flow is the gallons per minute is very, very important. So that the Bosch pump that you guys saw within the video was the one I started out with. And those typically flow between 4 to 5 gallons per hour, or gallons per minute, right? So they're come on a variety of factory items. They've been used a lot. They're a reliable pump. But when you do anything over the factory boost level, they start to show issues because they can't keep up with the amount of flow that you need to have to keep the system circulating water quick enough. So I went from that to the GT500, the 13 GT500 one, which is a Petersburg brand, I think, but it's a factory pump. They usually retail around $300 new, $350 or so, but you can find them used for cheaper than that. So I decided to go with that. That essentially, with a 0.75 line, doubles the gallons of water per minute. And all this data that I'm sharing with you is all from Department of Boost's website. Jason Eater is he's the one that owns Department of Boost. He's a great resource for supercharged vehicles and keeping IETs down and what works and what doesn't work. So if you ever, I'll include the link in the bottom of the video, but please check out his website, hit him up on Facebook. There's a Facebook group, and it's a very technical driven one concerning heat exchangers, pumps, line size, all that, and dealing with trying to keep your supercharger cool. So with that, installing everything, getting everything done, I found a SVE radiator specifically for my 96 that was cheap, used once again, and it was in good shape. So I purchased that for, I think it was $200 shipped. So another purchase that saved me another 50 bucks, depending on what sales are out there. But unfortunately, the fitment was great. But the way that I had the factory coolant tank set up had to change based on the extra rows of the radiator and then extending it closer to the engine. So that's where I included the video of me modifying a Paxton Canton coolant tank that comes with the Paxton kit. And I was able to make it fit in my combination by modifying it. And that was the process that I did with that. Going forward, so let's talk about the normal driving IETs. So before I even took it to the dyno, before I made a couple hits on it, I needed to data log and make sure that there was plenty of testing to make sure that it was doing what it needed to be. So driving back and forth to work, the IETs stay between 98 and 105 if you just drive normally, which is fantastic. That's only about 20 degrees over ambient. That is typical, I think, in a system with 0.75 lines. I think I can make it a little bit more efficient if I kind of fence off the heat exchanger. I will probably work on doing a little bit of things with that. And what I mean by that is a lot of the new cars, they have like the bottom aerodynamic, I guess it's probably called the, I'm at a loss of words. So it's the underbelly plastic thing that kind of directs air. Some of the newer vehicles have, and these vehicles don't have it. It wasn't developed to ever have a supercharger on it. So I think with that, I may be able to kind of reduce those because it'll direct the airflow through the actual heat exchanger and the radiator. So driving around is pretty good. It's very difficult to kind of see it under load in a test environment, and that's why we did the dyno. With that, after this, after I explain all this, I will flip to the data logs and kind of show you, but all three runs were pretty consistent. 18 degrees increase during the pull in fourth gear from it's starting out at 107, 109 and ending at 120, 123. So that's pretty decent for a fourth gear pull all the way up to 8,000 RPMs. It didn't pull any timing. It was about 25 degrees cooler than it did at the track. Now, the track is going to be a different test because you're going through all the gears and you're sitting in the standing line, and you may have hotter temperatures than a test situation like on a dyno. So that'll be another video that I'll do as soon as the track's open. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out the logs, and thanks for watching. All right, everybody, so I got the logs up here. I will kind of zoom in here. So this was the first dyno run that I did the other day, and you can kind of see what I was talking about. Let's pull up the intake air temperatures. So 4 of the main things that I would say if you're doing SET Live when you're trying to figure out IET issues and power issues and diagnosing things is kind of RPM is always kind of one of those things you want to have in there, the knock sensor, spark advance, and intake air temperature. So going from here, if you can kind of see where in the value and where my mouse is, you can kind of follow along and see how the IETs stay around 42 Celsius. So 42 Celsius is about 107, I think, Fahrenheit. And then you can kind of see at the very, very top at 7,700 RPM, it was at 49 Celsius, and then it tipped right into 50 as we let off. So that is about 49, 48 is about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can kind of see in the green there how it ramps up in IETs. So that is, data logging gives you a good measure for improvement. So if you have this log and you have all the variables and then you change something, you can see whether it made a difference based on the day. Now this is a 72-degree day in Temecula, California. So the DA, I think, was like 2,000 feet at the time, 72-degree day, and it was in the morning. So it was pretty nice out. All right, so another thing to kind of look at is the knock. So it started adding timing here, 50.50 and then 1 full degree of timing. And so you can kind of look at, this is what the IATs are going to start pulling if they get too hot. So you can kind of see it ramping up here from 22, the 22.5 and all the way to 23 degrees of timing. Now this is on E85, just so everybody understands that this is not timing you're going to see on pump gas. Alright, so this was the first run. I'll go to the second run so we can kind of show you the consistency that I was talking about between the runs. It's super important because it was only like 5 minutes, because they have like you have to get in and get out on them because they're super busy at the dyno. So there was only 5 minutes of time that we had in between runs. And when you're doing with a blower car, and the fact that the IETs kind of cooperated in that type of environment was really astounding and really important to kind of consider when you're driving the car, when you're racing it as well, to kind of keep those IETs down. Okay, so whenever you guys are doing this, you can just hit max, and then wherever the RPM you want to do, you can magnify it and kind of get as close as you want depending on what you're looking for. So this one looks very similar. So if we go all the way over, you can kind of see the IETs start again at right there. You can kind of see they're at 42 again. So the run started even lower at 40 Celsius there, which is 118, 115 degrees, and then, I'm sorry, 105, 107, and going up. And then you can kind of see as the RPMs go up, we end at 49.50 again. So this run was pretty decent. Another run that was successful in reaching 23 degrees of timing. Now, one interesting thing I wanted to show in this video was the last run. So the third run revealed a little bit of information that's pretty interesting. I use Sean at AED to tune. I trust him with everything I do as far as tuning. And he has a wealth of knowledge of how to tune on 91 and E85 out here in California. And he's pretty well known throughout the Coyote community as being one of the top tuners. The interesting thing is he has a lot of experience doing this, and the good part about it is there's a lot of little things here and there that you find when you're data logging that are pretty impressive to kind of keep the car safe, but also good for you, the operator, to kind of notice and kind of fix your car, the I guess you can call them inputs of the car to try to, that's not really indicative of the tune, but just trying to keep the tune from pulling timing. So if you kind of watch the video here, and you can see where it reaches 120 degrees or 50 intake air temperature. So it gets hot a little bit quicker on this run, about 1 degree, and so it was in the 50s, 51, 52, for about 400 to 500 RPM. And if you look down here at the knock, it was giving it 1 degree of timing, and then it went to 0.5 degrees of timing. So there was a reduction as soon as it hit 120, 122 degrees of Fahrenheit on the dyno. So there could be a lot of different things that this could be caused. There was no detonation, there was no, as far as I know, there was no false knock. So this could possibly be something in the tune that would, as kind of like a safety net. However, this is just me speculating. It could be false knock. It did not detonate on the dyno, or we would have kind of heard it and seen it in the log. Fuel trims are good to go. Everything kind of falls in line with the other two runs except for that little hiccup. But this is the type of stuff that you need to, this is why it's so important to log during a dyno. Okay, so thanks for tuning in, and hopefully this was helpful to somebody that's dealing with IAT issues or trying to improve their IAT system. Okay.